My real why is I feel like I am a Trojan horse for an upleveling of human consciousness, and that with my business success and the more money I make, I'm finding myself more often in rooms with more wealthy and more powerful people. And I want to infect them with the values that, I've developed and that I think are endemic in our community of, empathy and compassion, of this non-zero sum thinking, and, taking people who have been really successful because of the head and showing them that there's a different way of doing things. And so that's the motivator for me, beyond anything else, is I want to share that message with people who can do a lot with it.
Hi, this is JP Newman on Investing on Purpose. And today I'm interviewing Ted Moskovitz. Teddy came out to be first a doctor, then a lawyer, then he worked for the SEC when he kind of had this awakening, like that he wanted to do something much bigger with purpose. And so he decided he was going to jump into industries that he felt he can make a big disruption and create a better outcome, both financially and for humanity. He's done this with cryptocurrency. We had a great conversation how in 2013, he saw the idea of crypto and how it could basically democratize humanity. And he's been doing that ever since. Also doing the same thing with psychedelics. Can we actually get off of all mental illness with all of our medicines and prescriptions and change it to a model that we actually rewire our brain in a way that I've never even heard of before? Talk about like going way, way into the future. It's amazing what Teddy talks about. And of course, taking a game like pickleball, and how do you take pickleball, which is, as you know, is the number one craze, 40 million people playing across America, and how do you create a successful franchise? He's actually done this now, called the Texas Ranchers, the most successful one ever. And what's interesting about it is usually it's the billionaires that own the sports team. Well, Teddy has another idea. What if you democratize and let everybody own the sports team? And we're going to dive deep into that too. I think you're going to enjoy the conversation. Lots of practical tips on what you can be doing now, whether you're in the beginning of your career or towards the end, of sparking creativity, and also just some predictions and some thoughts about humanity and how we all have basically our own vote, our own power to change the outcome of what's to come for us as a species. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thanks. Hi, this is JP Newman on Investing on Purpose, and today we have Teddy Moskovitz with us. Wow, you're in for quite a show today. Ted is a new friend of mine. Everyone's been telling us in Austin that we've had to meet each other, and it's finally happened. It actually took our podcast to make this happen, but Teddy, I've wanted you on the show for a long time with Investing on Purpose, and everyone's been telling me you'll know why when you meet him. And now that I met you, I get it. I mean, I don't know anyone who's had your background between SEC regulation, being in the Senate, a massive crypto entrepreneur, to now you're running the number one pickleball team and launching that. And obviously with psychedelics and really, medicine. And it's interesting in your when listening to your story, there's a thorough line of coming into a place of how do I help humanity through business. And as you know, that's my passion. And I just found I always say there's certain kind of people in life. I'm a one-hit wonder, and I joke about that. I've been doing real estate for a long time. I'm not some guys are just great at creating companies and then they get bored and they go on and they create the next one. I've been on kind of I've had two paths. I've had Sony too, but I just find it so fascinating when people can do something, recreate it, and then manifest it and do it again and again, and then do that consistently. And then with massive mission behind it, the way you're doing it really is super interesting to me. So thank you. I think you guys are going to enjoy this show. I think you're going to hear a lot of the why from Teddy, and we're going to go into the story of where he came from. But I also think you're going to get a lot of practical how to look at things a little differently. How do you make more money by just being more conscientious on how you do it? So let's see what we can do on this one. Just to start, I mean, you told me you were born in Toronto?
Yep.
And you've moved over to a lot of different places. Like, what got you in this whole rhythm? Like, what was the start of this that got you in the rhythm of this is what I'm going to do for a living, and starting to kind of find your purpose within that?
Yeah. So I think, growing up, my dad was a physician, and the joke in my house when I was a kid was that I had ultimate career flexibility. I could be any kind of doctor I wanted. And so, I grew up doing rounds with my dad on Sunday morning, and, just always thought I was going to be on this doctor track. It's my childhood dream. Like, there was never any question of what I was going to do.
I was going to be a lawyer, nice Jewish lawyer. So yeah. I gotcha.
Yeah. As a nice Jewish boy, doctor, lawyer, you only have so many options. Right. And so it really felt ingrained in me. And, I did work in public health, and I did work in building CPR and first aid training programs in the developing world, and started my undergrad doing pre-med micromolecular biology. And, just sort of had my whole life planned out for me. And, spoiler alert, ended up not going to med school, going to law school instead.
Yeah.
And then once again, had the whole thing planned out. The thing was, law school, go work at a big firm or at the SEC, then go do, hedge fund, then do private equity, maybe switch in out of big law. And I had this sort of 20-year plan. And then
very responsible 19-year-old.
Very responsible. Yeah. I mean, by the end of law school, you're 24 at that point, but, essentially had the whole thing come crashing down over the course of about one day. I had been dating an amazing woman at the time who I was getting ready to move in with and who I was sure I was going to marry. And she comes home one Sunday night or over to my apartment and dumps me. I go into work the next morning, feeling obviously very depressed. And around noon, we got an email that this young guy in the office next to me had died. Fit, healthy guy. He was Indian. He had been traveling in India a few weeks before, picked up this obscure infection, and they did like the full Dr. House thing on him and basically couldn't save him and, died in a couple of days. And, I noticed over the 2 weeks thereafter, the sort of pile of work on his desk, his name's Praveen, just sort of dwindled down until there was nothing left. And then they took his name off of the office door. And I just had this realization that if I stayed on what I thought my path was, if I were to die at some point along that path, I would have had no meaningful impact on the world whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I was doing what I had been socialized to believe I was supposed to. We are conditioned so easily by family and by society. And especially when you go through law school or through med school, everyone around you, into certain definitions of success. And
I was going to say on that note, I actually have a very similar experience. Like I was supposed to be the lawyer.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it comes when you're a kid. I just realized I think back at my grandfather, my parents just saying how proud they were of me at a young age.
Yeah.
And so you get so positively reinforced of to be successful. I mean, I think it's inbred and then there's some good things about that too, about being told you're special. Maybe sometimes you believe it, which is gives you the resilience to succeed. But the bad part is you get the program. It's there's so many like you're already your life before you get a chance to kind of identify what your passion is. You get kind of caught in those things. That was my experience, at least. I kind of had to wake up at about the same age.
Yeah. I guess I feel very fortunate that I had that sort of positive reinforcement from family and believing that I was capable of doing something special and being someone special. And so I basically just, blew up my whole life and decided I was going to go find what my purpose was and what I really wanted to do. And so quit and, started a company with a friend, and that just put me on the entrepreneurial path. And, that's kind of how the whole track began. But Amazing. It's just been a series of, following my interest and focusing a lot on developing myself above all else. And that's turned into some really good results on the business side too.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the developing yourself. Where did that come from? Was it a religious upbringing? Was it kind of a spiritual awakening? What brought that even urge? Because I find that so many people in business every day, it's black and white. I'm here to make money, or very strategic in the Excel spreadsheet, but that maybe have awakened that part of themselves. Where did that come from you?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have always had, a deep sense of purpose and desire for contribution, philanthropy. My dad grew up in the Soviet Union and escaped as a religious refugee. My grandfather was, a Holocaust survivor in the concentration camps. And growing up, I definitely had, a very Jewish upbringing and a lot of service built into that. My mom was chair of the food bank and worked with the Holocaust Museum. And we just, as a family, were doing a lot of service-oriented things. And so I definitely had that, sort of angle on things. I think, what really got me addicted to business was more the sort of Michael Lewis, liar's poker, barbarian at the gate, very zero sum type thing. And, in my first companies before I had my sort of personal awakening, it was definitely very much like that for me. And, there was a lot more struggle in those companies than there have been in the one since.
Yeah.
Honestly, for me, the shift came from doing psychedelics and psychedelic medicine. And, just tapping more into the heart rather than being completely in the head, which is challenging because my head got me so far,
I get it.
All these accolades and accomplishments. It was
I get it,
being
man.
smart. And that was the thing that did it for me. And so letting go of that.
Smart with a personality where you can get what you want because you're a good salesperson.
Yeah.
That's really a dangerous combination.
Yeah. And so just having to redefine the identity and to soften, as a human, and to be more empathetic and to be more genuinely caring of the person across the table from me. and shifting it to more, being on the same side, of the table as people in business.
Yeah.
I think is really what led to it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. You and I, I'm going to jump a little bit if it's okay.
Yeah.
You and I talked about something. I really found it intriguing. Your response is that you and I we're very lucky. We get to go to like the TED conferences and all the large conferences and meet just about every thought leader in the world, or read about them or meet them.
Yeah.
And I think we all kind of know, within our circles, I think we all kind of know that we have this moment of technology is exploding.
Yeah.
Whether it's artificial intelligence, CRISPR, you just name it. And that this feeling that the human beings, our software, our operating system, our consciousness is here, but we're doing this. And of course, that gap that keeps widening creates a fear of like, are we going to self-destruct, or, can we win all these challenges because we're going to level up with empathy and all these things? Or are we going to really find ourselves with more and more conflict and challenges that we won't be able to solve because we weren't able to bridge the gap? And I know that in every company that you're working on, including your pickleball company, you're taking traditional businesses in medicine, in sports, in crypto, in finance, and you're turning them on the head. And when I asked you why, I wanted to go a little deeper. You said, because I'm worried about this gap, but I want to see if I can close this gap between technology and humanity. Can you tell us a little more about that? Because I think it's really important.
Yeah. So, my career as an investor and having our fund started as being tech investors, right? Just sort of straight up. But what I realized over the years was that the tech is really only half of the equation. Like we were doing, technology for impact, right? Like how do we solve challenges in the world using tech? And what I came to realize is that the tech is only half of the equation, and that the most important tech that you can actually work on is what I call the human OS. It's our minds and our hearts and our spirit, if you want to go in that direction. So I just begun to really shift, away from the pure technology and towards let's work on the people and create people who will then build the right technology, who will prioritize the right things. And so, there's a lot of different ways that manifests, but, some of it is just the personal development work that we do with our founders, right? Like stroking a check is one thing, but we're doing so much more than that. We're giving people access to, world-class coaches and, that sort of ceremonial work and things like that, and just developing amazing humans who will then have the right ethics and values to sort of
basically
build the right
you're
stuff.
like an incubator venture capital fund that's actually
For the mind. Yeah.
For the mind. Can you tell a little more about your fund and how you're doing it and the companies? Just give us a little more like what you're doing and what the goal is.
Yeah. So, I've been doing it for the last 7 years or so. It started out as just, the intersection of blockchain and social impact tech. My background before that, I'd been doing kind of like impact and international development sort of work and things like that. I just wanted to be solving big challenges.
You also you were an early adopter of Bitcoin. You said 2013.
Yeah.
With your first early 7-digit successes happening very early in your life, which is cool too, to actually see a trend way early.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of that just came from being philosophically involved in the movement and being a champion of human sovereignty and, being someone who was working in the Senate, during the financial crisis and seeing TARP and all of these things happen and just realizing that this was not the way out of the problems, and this sort of infinite money printer of the US government, wasn't the solution. And, believing in money as a key tool for human sovereignty, right? And having money outside of the system. So, that was definitely a big part of it. And then, we shifted into more investing into the tools that we wanted for ourselves and for founders, right? So psychedelic medicine and taking the first psychedelic manufacturing company public on the NASDAQ. Working on,
which is amazing, by the way.
Yeah.
What does the company do?
It was a manufacturer of the compounds themselves. Yeah. It's since shifted away from that a bit, just because the market's not in a place yet where there's actually enough demand to make as much as you can make.
Sure.
But it was a compound manufacturer and, a creator of some novel compounds and things like that. And then, I was like, okay, we're sort of building in parallel to mental health and giving people, access to psychedelic medicines. What's the next thing? And I thought it was physical health. If people are living in pain and in bodies that aren't working well, they're not going to prioritize the right things, and they're not going to be empathetic toward others if they themselves aren't in a good place. And so we started doing, life sciences and some of the biohacking, longevity, kind of stuff like that.
What specifically? I love it. I nerd out on that stuff.
Precision medicine, genetic-based medicine. Now we're doing work around gene editing people's brains, essentially, to change
pretty wild.
The way that they perceive the world and give people superpowers and get rid of disease.
Think about think about that difference. So you talk about this difference between where we're at and technology.
Yeah.
You were saying a little bit at lunch, like the idea that we actually can. I know for a lot of people in the audience, it might freak them out, but the idea that we can actually edit our software system up, our operating system, to potentially be happier or have less fear.
Yeah.
Less fear as a basis probably takes humanity to a whole other level because maybe we're not fighting so much over lots of things.
That's the hope, right?
That's the hope.
In mice, it's working really well. I'll say that, right?
Is it?
Yeah.
Are the mice nicer to each other?
The mice are much less anxious. They have better working memory. They have less obsessive behaviors. So yeah, less depression. Like the way that we measure these
So they're
things
not
in
always
mice
they're not always on Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. The infant scrolling. Yeah. The way you test it is sort of interesting. It's like you use the thing called the marble burying test, and mice, bury these marbles and try to do this sort of like hoarding behavior when they're feeling anxious. And when they're not feeling anxious, they don't do that as much. So that's one of the ways that you measure it in mice. But
that's cool.
Sort of back to your original question of like the why behind all of this, my real why is I feel like I am a Trojan horse for an upleveling of human consciousness, and that with my business success and the more money I make, I'm finding myself more often in rooms with more wealthy and more powerful people. And I want to infect them with the values that, I've developed and that I think are endemic in our community of, empathy and compassion, of this non-zero sum thinking, and, taking people who have been really successful because of the head and showing them that there's a different way of doing things. And so that's the motivator for me, beyond anything else, is I want to share that message with people who can do a lot with it.
Have you found, and maybe you can even give us an example, like how do you, as someone who's wealthy, it's easy as a man, and I can say it, like we all have our ego. So once you're the provider, you're the alpha male, I made the money. How do you infect them with that enthusiasm? How do you make the case, and maybe you can share a case of like a person that you've been able to help transform?
There's only one way, and the way is by being a model yourself, right? By getting to know these people and having them look at you and be like, what is it with this person? Like there's something attractive there. There's something that I want to uncover, and seeing the way that, allowing them to see how you relate to your children and how you relate to your spouse and how you relate to your business partner and how you relate to colleagues. And they're just being like, like this person has had some material success, but they're doing it in a way that's really different from what I've done. Like maybe there's something for me to learn here. And so I think that's really, the biggest way. And then, there have also been a lot of people whose just lives have been transformed through, participating in some of these plant medicine ceremonies, right?
Yeah.
Who really shift the way that they perceive the world and see themselves in the world. And I'm not going to call these people out by names, but like, these are people that you've heard of, like billionaires who are in the media all the time and who I think are fundamentally shifted people, not because of me, like they have to do the work themselves, right? But at least by showing them like, hey, these things that you have thought are really taboo and are these druggy kinds of things, are being utilized by a lot of other wealthy, successful people who are getting good results from it. It just feels a little bit safer for people to give it a try themselves and participate in it, because I look more like them and I'm more relatable than, the hippie with dreads on the beach in Santa Monica who, they typically associate it with. So,
well, yeah, I say Austin right now, we're having a moment. I'm sure you're experiencing the same moment. Like I feel like every weekend I could go to another psychedelic ceremony in Austin.
Yeah.
I almost like this is like a renaissance, like I feel like we're almost like in the Haight-Ashbury, which was that psychedelic counterculture in San Francisco in the late 60s and the early 70s. I feel like Austin's in that moment. And I think that, amongst our community, there's like more things going on. But I think the thing, for those who have not had a psychedelic experience, and I'm not saying whether you should or shouldn't, but I think what you're really getting, and Jamie Wheal does a great job in his book, Lightning, I gotta think of his book, but
Recapture the Rapture.
Recapture the Rapture. There was one before that also about
superhuman
stealing
fire.
Fire. It's a great book if any of you have not read it. And what Jamie talks about is like, for so long, like these plants were not really available to the public. They were available to the high priest. But I think what we're talking about here, which is why we were saying this and they're so impactful, is you get a moment where your brain, this is back to what we're talking about. Can we get the operating software to get closer to here?
Yeah.
And I think when you can relax your prefrontal cortex, which is your orchestra leader of all your thoughts, your beliefs, and it's out there to protect you. And it does a marvelous job. That's why you don't walk in front of a subway car or put your hand on a fire thing. And so it's doing its job in a great way. Yeah. But unfortunately, sometimes the wetware, the software, is so caught up in protecting you in survival that it can't allow you to go deeper into your heart or your thoughts or your intuition. I know that when that can relax a little bit, and that's what these psychedelic studies are showing at University of Texas and all these trials for PTSD, when you can get someone out of that and relax the prefrontal cortex, you could open up other hemispheres. And when you have a taste of the feeling of like, wow, I'm more than my head, I'm more than my thoughts.
Yeah.
I'm actually my body, and there's this heart here, and I can actually feel. I can really feel how much I love. And I think they talk about this in the Bible or the Torah or whatever. Like, and so I think that if you haven't done psychedelics and haven't had the experience, I think that's why they're all the rage right now. Yeah. Is because this idea of, but how can we bypass our current software and upgrade quickly? And the thing is, these experiences don't necessarily have a lasting impact if you don't do the work. Like, it might give you the opening or the feeling of the experience, but it's not over there. Unfortunately, we're humans, and human existence is gritty.
That's the real work, right? Is how do you take what you learn in those experiences and bring it back into your life?
Otherwise, it's a waste. It's not a waste of time. It's a party trick. You went to Burning Man.
Yeah. And, I mean, I know a lot of people here in Austin who are also constantly, they're always in ceremony. They're always taking medicine. And to me, it's like, it's not medicine if you need it all of the time. Like, it's not working, right?
Right.
You know, I do a lot of psychedelic advocacy and talk about this stuff, and people must think I'm tripping all the time. Like, I'm not. I mean, this might be a couple times a year for me,
right,
you know, that I'm doing this thing.
Right.
The practice is, how do I live my normal grounded life with the things that I learned from it?
Yeah.
And sort of bring it back into daily experience. And so, yes, you know, I'm encouraging of people trying these things. And yes, I'm also saying, like, don't become someone who's chasing, right? And who's constantly trying to have that experience. You know, it has to be grounded and sort of brought back in for it to be effective.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the show. And if you are, just know a lot of this content comes from my day job at thrivefp.com that underwrites this entire show. If you're interested in learning more about purpose-driven investment opportunities where success and sustainability and purpose come together, check out thrivefp.com. Now back to the show. So I want to go back to your comment about the Trojan horse, and let's go back to your fund. So you're already taking a traditional VC fund where they're supposed to be helping you, but usually they help you on a business plan, right? How often do they talk about helping you, like helping grow their leaders spiritually, mentally, psychically, to become these amazing leaders? And as we talk about, you know, purpose-driven businesses create outsized returns. That's the log line for investing on purpose. Yeah. So you're doubling down on that. And when you bring investors in and you talk about what you're doing for these groups, it's probably a little risky for you in a lot of your businesses. I think for your pickleball franchise, the Ranchers, the Texas Ranchers, which is now, I think you said the #1 grossing of a new emerging league. Again, you're doing it a very non-traditional way. You're trying to bring in money that's more aligned, not necessarily the wealthiest people, but money that's aligned. But you take a risk every time you do that by basically saying to an investor, I'm doing it a different way. A lot of times people don't like different ways. Yeah. I'm just curious, like how has the reaction been in raising money where you're kind of saying consciousness, humanity is a top value of the fund? It will get you to the return, but actually a value of a service. Here's what I think you're saying. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah. So with our fund, there was no outside money. It was all our own money. And we had the luxury of getting to do this experiment, right? And we definitely lost deals in terms of like investing in things or people not wanting to be involved with us because we had been doing advocacy for a long time. In terms of the Ranchers, I think the world is now waking up to a different way of doing things. And when you have a track record of success in doing things a different way, people give you a little bit more grace than they might otherwise. And I think there are a lot more people opening their minds to new ways of thinking and doing things than previously. And so there's just a lot more openness to it, you know, than there has been before. And, you know, I think so many of us recognize the fundamental flaws in the systems that we live under all the time. Like, the reason cryptocurrency has done so well is because people realize the failings of the financial system, right? Someone who's under 30 right now realize that the American dream is dead for them, right? Like, the thing that your grandparents and parents had success with will not work for you. Yeah. It's why people are interested in cryptocurrency and these alternatives. People realize that, you know, prescribing SSRIs and the traditional drugs for, you know, treating psychiatric disease, like, are not working for people. And so they're open to trying other things and new ways of doing things. I think people realize that most pro sports teams are owned by one older, typically white person, and all the value is generated by the fans and by the community, and yet they get none of the value. And so we just present this model of saying, hey, like, we want something that's owned by the community. Like, the people who are bringing value to this, the people who are the fans for this, should be the ones who own it. Right. What does it look like to have a pro sports team owned by, you know, majority, minority, and female owners? Like, what can we do different from that? And so far it's working, right? You know, we're the most followed team in the league. I think we're the highest grossing team in the league. We have been, I think, a real model for what success looks like in this new sport, going, I don't want to say up against, but in the same league as people who own pro sports teams, in the Big Four, who are these really successful entrepreneurs. I mean, like, the names of the people who own these teams, right? We're talking about like LeBron James and Mark Cuban and Gary Vee. And, there's a lot of people who have a lot of experience in this. And, we have been successful because we're doing it a different way. And that's how all amazing technology starts, right?
It does.
Is looking at something and saying, we need to fundamentally rethink the way that we're doing this. So it's working. And I think that's why people are following us.
That is awesome. By the way, I know you told me it wasn't like natural for you, pickleball. It wasn't like you grew up and you wanted to become a pickleball player. In fact, you knew very little about it. And then, so why, like, out of all your energies with all the opportunities, I'm going to ask you, like, what was it about pickleball for you? And what do you see in it that you're putting your time and money into?
I think there's two things. One is that I try to be as integrated a human as possible. I think a lot of people have their work self and their family self and their out with friends self, and it's very different people. I try to be, it's just me, right? Like, what you see is what you get. Like, there's no filter. Like, I feel I'm a really integrated person across all those different domains. And I love pickleball and I love playing and I love being able to compete in something as an adult. I did, a lot of athletics growing up and loved competing and had some success in it. And so I love being able to compete once again, but more than anything, it's just integrating something that I'm so passionate about and turning it into my work. So that's the first half.
Yeah.
The second half is, again, this narrative that I've cultivated of like, my story is building in parallel to systems that have failed and showing different ways of doing things and building incentive alignment, right? Making sure that the people who are bringing value to a system are the ones who are rewarded for it. That's a lot of what the sort of blockchain decentralization movement is about. And then I also have ambitions to have an imprint on culture, and pro sports are one of the things that has the biggest imprint on culture. And so it really seemed like one of the top echelons that you could operate in to bring these new values and to show that there's a different model of how we do things, in an industry that's so staid and that has the model cultivated so well. It seemed like this is the next big thing to tackle, is this sort of like sports industrial complex and have it be owned by the people, Right. So really so
will it truly be on like, will there be like either shares through like a crypto or a blockchain? Will it be like, will there be common stock or something that ownerships that won't just be like one billionaire who owns it? Is that kind of what the thought is for that?
I mean, there's already, 50 people who own it. And over time, it's continued steps toward democratization, right?
Yeah.
The eventual goal is to literally have it be owned by the fans, people who live here in Austin or anywhere around the world that want to support us, that want to have a piece of it, become the owners of it. And it's a process, like legally, to actually be able to do it. And, I learned a lot of lessons from the sort of.
I love that, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it intuitively makes so much sense. It's like, you're the one bringing the value, you get the reward. Like, right. That makes sense to us, right? Yeah. But most of our financial systems are not structured that way right now. And I think that's
they're not democratized. They're for sure.
So that's where we're headed, right? And so eventually one day, like, yes, this is something that I think will be owned by the people. And I think we'll have an incredible amount of success because of that. I see small glimpses of this all the time. Like, my friends who are part owners in restaurants, like, whenever you have company dinners or friends in town, like, you go there, right? You shop at the things that you own. And so I want people to have a real true sense of connection to what we're doing. I want to sell a lot of merchandise because you're wearing the hat of the team that you own and that you're proud to talk about.
The Green Bay Packers, isn't the Green Bay Packers, aren't they owned by the city of Green Bay?
The Green Bay Packers are not, there is no financial interest for the owners of the Green Bay Packers. So everyone thinks the Packers are owned by the people.
I always thought that. I thought they were the one football team that was owned by the people.
It's the example that people give me all the time, and it's not actually true, right? So what you have is basically like the ability to be a season ticket holder and perks and things like that, but you do not have any financial interest in the team. When the team makes money, there's no money coming back to you. So they have taken it one of the furthest, right, of a lot of pro sports teams. We see examples of it abroad that are a lot closer. Like in Argentina, there's some true like community-owned teams and sort of public-private partnership type things.
Yeah.
But we're moving in the direction of like true economic ownership, because ownership in name and perk is one thing, but where the money goes is who the real owner is, in my opinion.
It's interesting that they do it that way. Let me ask you a couple of things. One, I want to ask you, so for a lot of people starting out, it all sounds lofty to be able to do these wonderful things, democratize ticket sales or sports teams or change psychedelic research. But I can tell you, even from my own experience, I struggled in my 20s. I had 20 jobs.
Yeah.
I moved around. And I really didn't feel like I had the luxury of anything except survival mode. Like, how am I going to pay my rent? Didn't have the luxury of like thinking lofty on those kind of things. And I'm just curious, if you were to give advice to people who are maybe in a younger stage in their business as entrepreneurs or starting out, or like they almost feel like they're dreaming of this, but they're not even close. Do you have any like tips of how you'd even start or how you started or tips to start out in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it is important to build some base level of stability in your life to be able to go and take these risks, to save up enough money that you're not going to be on the streets if it fails. Like there are a lot of entrepreneurs who say like, like burn the boats behind you, right? Like go all in, like no parachute. And like, that's cool. I don't know that my constitution would allow that without overwhelming, paralyzing anxiety.
Yeah.
So like, I was an attorney, right? My wife was an attorney. Like we were making good money in our professions and saving money to buy ourselves the luxury of being able to go and take these risks and do these kinds of things.
Yeah.
So I do think that that's important, but I also think that, in your 20s, it's really doing a lot of different things and discovering what interests you and what your superpowers are. When people say like, what's your one tip, for being successful in business, is like, well, what are you good at? What do you enjoy? What's that intersection of, purpose and passion and actual skills? Like go do that. And sometimes that means you have to do a lot of different things along the way to figure that out.
Let me ask you a question on that, because I've been challenged. I noticed on Instagram lately, a couple of my friends who've been on this podcast are like, screw what your passion is. Like, that's a Western fantasy, just like marriage. Just, like figure out your goal and go get it done. And then your passion will come from the philanthropy you do or what you do.
Yeah.
What do you say to that? Like, is that a Western fantasy, or is that a Western, like, is that flowery, or is that really, or follow your dreams? Like follow your dreams or follow your business plan, and then you can get to your dreams.
It's both. Like, I would not be able to be successful long-term in something that I had no passion for. Like the financial result by itself wouldn't be enough for me. Like no matter how much money I was making in something, I would be miserable doing something that I wasn't good at.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things I could be doing that would make me a lot of money, but I would just be a deeply unfulfilled person. And there have been multiple times along the way where I've taken big financial hits for pursuing the passion. I think that the most success will come when you sort of find that sweet spot. And I'm not saying you don't have to do the work. Like there's a grind in everything you do. I mean, the best, most fun jobs that I've ever had, and I've had some amazing things, there's still times where it's like, roll up your sleeves, eat your vegetables, do the work.
Yeah.
So I think the real misnomer comes from people saying like, follow your purpose, follow your flow, when it gives you an excuse to quit things when they get hard. And you're like, it wasn't in flow. It wasn't feeling with ease. Like, this isn't for me. It's like, fuck your ease. Like, go do the thing. You know what I mean? So it's got to be both, right?
I was telling you at lunch, like for me, as a creator, I'm a deal guy, and there hasn't been many deals in commercial real estate lately. So this is the least fun. You want to talk about operations with me? I will glaze over so quickly, but I can't right now. I don't have the luxury of glazing over that. I do have a great team here, but no, I hear what you say. It is hard. It is hard work. And I do think it's probably a combo of both. I think a lot of people too, I feel like as I'm meeting a lot of people, you kind of know like who's going to make it and who's not. I've just been with enough people and mentored enough younger people that sometimes like you don't want to tell the person, but you kind of know like they're not really well suited for what they're trying to get, or there's a big flaw in their plan, and it might be a personal flaw. Like you just don't get it. Like they're not that charismatic salesperson that's going to blow up the world, even though it's a good idea. But like, where did it come from? It doesn't feel congruent, and that's a hard one sometimes. And that maybe to your point of like, and then you see people chasing. And I've seen this with so many young people. Sometimes you get locked onto a dream, and you almost start to buy your own story. And they talk about this a lot at Capital Factory. I mentor at Capital Factory, which is a local tech innovation group here. And a lot of times they really lecture the UT incubator things. Do not fall in love. In fact, Gordon was on my show. Gordon is the co-founder, Gordon Moore of Capital Factory. He says it's like one of the things is do not fall in love. And he says constantly challenge whatever you think you have or whatever assumption you're making. He talks a lot about challenging that assumption and getting third party to verify or not verify and being okay with the results.
Yeah.
So it is about passion, but it's also about data, right? It's about data and getting feedback to see, is your product and service even really needed? You may think it's needed. Yeah. Does it really scale? Do people really need it?
And try to go sell it, even before you build it oftentimes, right? Like people have an amazing idea for something and, folks come to us and it's like, we've invested, $2 million into building up this thing. I'm like, oh, cool. How many people are using it? It's like, oh, it's pre-revenue. It's like, could you just go find 5 people to sign an LOI that they're actually willing to give you money and then build the thing after and interview them and ask what they want along the way to actually build the thing that's going to be useful? Like go out, fail fast, right? Try to actually sell a thing and then go from there.
I had a funny thing. So last week they asked me to be a guest mentor at Capital Factory it was the UT club. And I'll leave the product, but I'm listening to the pitch for the product. And it was one of those things where I'm just like, don't get it. Like, and it's a really simple product. It wasn't hard to understand. I just didn't get the need for it. And so I asked them like 4 questions, and their name was wrong. Like everything about it was wrong. They talked about being eco-friendly, and in reality, like that's just the name. We're not really eco-friendly. So you're 21 and you're already greenwashing people at 21 years old. This is crazy. And finally I said, hey, are you guys open? Like, you know, I'm here. You've got me.
Yeah.
Do you want to get some feedback from someone who's already very successful in your industry? And do you want to do a pitch right now on the spot? And I think they were kind of like it wasn't bullshit. Like, do you want to hear right now about your product? Pick up the phone, call my friend. He actually answered, which was great. And I said, go pitch. This guy could change your life.
Yeah.
Because he's an expert in this field.
Yeah.
And they pitched, and the response was, you're going to die quickly. Like, don't put yourself through this pain. This plan will get you nowhere and into a wall. And I know they had a really hard time hearing it. I saw it on their face, and they almost didn't want to believe it. But it was my gut too.
Yeah.
And I was hoping to save them time. I don't know if I saved them time or not, but I think to your point about failing fast.
Yeah.
I think that's such an important thing that as a leave behind, like, and ask people, like, because I can tell they were so insulated, they were so jacked, but didn't really ask like on some basic assumptions, like the relevancy of their product, and is there a big enough total market for it to hit.
Mentoring is hard, man. Like, I've done mentoring for like Techstars and Founders Institute and, a bunch of the stuff. My wife does Capital Factory, and I talk to some of those companies too sometimes. And I always feel this tension between wanting to like give them the real thing, but also not crushing their dream too early. And something that I've struggled with a lot as a leader in companies is you have to let people go on their journey. Yeah. Like, you have to let them live the experience, and nothing you say is going to actually change their mind other than the experience. And I find I'm usually so fast to want to step in and, try to give people the path. But part of what I'm evolving into as a leader is letting people have their path, and this is the journey that they're supposed to go on. And yes, give them good advice for sure, right?
Yeah.
And if you really see someone's going to fail and burn down their life and all that, like, try to set them on it. But also just stepping back and being like, you know what, this is their journey, and not having such an ego that my mind isn't open to the possibility that maybe I'm wrong about it.
Ted, let me ask you, if you were 21 again, and knowing what you know, having all the experience you have in 21 today, you just graduated college, or you're 25, yeah. What areas would you, starting from scratch, you had nothing, what industries interest you, or where do you see the opportunities coming up in the next several years? Like, what's intriguing to you? You seem to call trends early.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on what you want from your life, right? I think if you're in this, like, where are the next real, like, tech unicorn money future things going? I mean, the intersection of AI and cryptocurrency for sure, the intersection of AI and robotics for sure. I mean, we're going through a fundamental reorganization of society through AI in a way that feels very buzzwordy and is in vogue right now, but is absolutely true. I mean, so many.
What does it mean when you say, I got the robotics part. When you say AI and crypto coming together, what does that look like?
There's a lot of financial agents, being developed, like handing over financial trading to AI and just letting it run and do its thing. And you have a financial agent that meets with another financial agent, and they can cultivate an entire business and spin up an entire website and payment processing and just the whole thing, right? Like, you have an idea that then is fully promulgated in the world into something with no ability to code. Like, if you ask people, 10 years ago, like, hey, you want to be successful in tech, what do you do? Stanford CS was probably a really good direction to go in.
CS is for what?
Computer science, like learning to code.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I don't think people need to learn to code at all anymore. I think that if you really want to be successful in this next wave, you focus on empathy and on connection and on soft skills. Like, that's the next wave, I think.
Tell me more about, that's really important. Tell me more about that. What does that mean when you say that?
Because what's the hard skills in the coding, everyone is going to be able to do in their pocket. I mean, like, I had a really complex math problem yesterday, and I just typed it in basic language to ChatGPT, and I got the answer to it. Like, I would have had to go find someone with a PhD in math, like, to be able to do this. Like,
that's amazing.
I did it myself, right? If I want to build a website right now, or I want to test an idea for a new product, I don't hire a designer and a coder and all these things, right? I use one of these AI tools, and I'm like, I want a website that does this, and then it builds it for me, and I've tested it instantly, right? And so the things that I think used to be hard with technical co-founders and actual building and making sure that the software works well, like that will not exist anymore. We're moving to an idea and economy and a community building economy. And can I build a coalition of people around me who believe in this thing and get people bought into it? It's studying human psychology and how we relate to each other and things. That's where it was.
So then why do you think that having skills in human emotion and empathy are important though? Because can't we just synthesize that? ChatGPT does a pretty good job of acting warm and fuzzy, even though it's just an algorithm. So what is it about that you see as having the value skills? Like what's the difference between synthetic humanity versus real humanity? Or maybe there isn't a difference.
I haven't fallen in love with an AI yet. I don't hang out with them.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting around the campfire.
Yeah.
With AI swapping stories, right? I don't know if you are, and maybe there people are, out there. I think that's a sad future. That's not what
my rabbi says. There's AI and there's DI. And he says there'll never be a difference between AI and DI. AI, obviously, we know is artificial intelligence, and DI is divine intelligence.
Direct
and he
connection.
says there's something in that breath. There's something in us that makes us human. And I think what he was saying specifically, if you look at the Bible or the Torah, you're looking at we all are a divine spark of a magical thing that we can't synthesize. How do we explain that? That's why I asked you the question several times because I know that's hard because it's going to get better and better in ChatGPT 5. Like the simulation of these things is going to get better and better. So why will we value empathy? And the answer might be because intuitively we know the difference. Is it the difference between a vinyl record and a download that's digital? Or is it a feeling? Is it a grain? Is it an intuition? Do we get tricked? I mean, I know we don't know, and I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but it's just
like there's synthetic connection now. Like you can pay someone, to love you, right? Like you can pay someone for physical needs and intimacy needs and, even going beyond that. But like, I don't think it has risen to the level of the real thing. And going to what you're talking about, I am someone too who believes in the oneness of humanity and the spark of the divine in all of us, and that we are all God, experiencing this sort of human form. That's the real magic of the human experience, right? It's that sort of ineffable, ethereal thing that we're all seeking glimpses and moments of feeling a part of that. I don't think that's going to be replaced. I may be wrong, I'm open to that, but the greatest moments of my life I know are irreplaceable by AI, like the birth of my daughter and her opening her eyes and me being right there and that being the first thing that she ever saw. Like, so what are you creating there?
So you were saying AI with crypto, AI paired with financial things. What else would you look at? Just to finish that up, and then I'm going to ask you the next fun follow-up question. But tell me, like, what else do you think is opportunity?
Yeah, I think just anywhere that you have sort of misaligned incentives, like where do you have the sort of like rent-seeking, middlemen, like, in your industry, I think this is going to be piss off some of the listeners, but
Go for it.
The sort of like mortgage brokerage type experiences and title and closing and all those types of things. I mean, I paid a lot of money for those when I bought my house. I could do that on a smart contract for a few cents.
You think about even my job as, a person who syndicates real estate, really what is an investor? I mean, there's going to be a spreadsheet. There'll be an AI that'll score the property and do everything. Yeah. So then really the only like value ultimately is you're gonna have to believe that my humanity is always gonna have some edge over synthetic only.
Yeah.
That somehow by have touching 19,000 apartment units and I'm hit on the head and that there's something to your point. Yeah. There's something in that humanness that makes me a little better than the AI. And it may turn out that the score is equal. We don't know. But if you think about it, like any of us, including, it's very easy to aggregate an investor in an apartment deal, give it a score. I mean,
you would never buy a building without visiting it though, right?
No.
Like you got to walk the halls. You got to talk to the tenants. You got to see like, is there a corner store with the nice old woman serving up coffee to everyone in the morning? Like there are things to it that the AI cannot do.
There's a lot of stories. You talk to the manager, you can tell on their line. I got a great lie last week. I went to visit a property in Tennessee and they were just lying. Like it was actually one of the most blatant lies. But they were told by their seller, this is what I want you to say. And we had fact checked it. And like, again, if you didn't know the difference, you might just accept that as data. But I've done this for so long that I just knew I saw the cracks as soon as you started talking.
Yeah. So I think, the real answer now that we're talking about is think about the things that AI cannot replace. Like that's where to go, right? That's the advantage, I suppose. Is go find those
the human crevices. Okay, so here's the fun part. Anything else you want to add to that? Because here's my next. Okay, so Now I want you to call bullshit on trends that you're seeing, worries, fears about humanity, predictions. What do you want to call bullshit on?
I mean, I want to call bullshit on the belief that we are already too far gone down the path that humanity cannot be saved. And I also want to call bullshit on the Pollyanna belief that we will somehow figure it out. Because it's going to take something real in order to do it. And it's going to take a fundamental reshaping of how we are as humans and our motivations and the way that we relate to each other in order for that to happen. You know, when we begin to all see each other as fellow sparks of the divine, you know, we'll start to be on the right path. I think there are a lot of folks who have this sort of techno-utopian belief that we'll just invent our way out of this stuff. And going back to what I said before, you know, the tech is only half of the equation. Like, if we don't fix the people, then we don't really have a hope for saving ourselves.
Right. And so what's your bet on humanity? I mean, instead of just saying optimistic, pessimistic, because the 10 is humans win in the next 100 years or humans lose, which would be a 0. Where are you at, honestly, when you check in? And that's a hard one.
I'm going to keep trying.
I gotcha.
I'm going to keep trying.
I really understand that instinct, by the way. And I really respect that answer. I think it's a really honest answer because if, you know, we're humans, all of us, you out there, every one of us has to vote every day. It's a small, simple gesture of walking a person across the street, acknowledging someone. Kids in the corner, the kid who's quiet, like, are you doing okay? Saying hello. You know, I've seen some crazy things with kids disappearing from suicide and stuff, like just not reaching out. Other kids, it's like, so it's really important that humanity is becoming, I guess, even more and more important.
We're getting better every day. You know, I see it in my community. You know, we're getting better every day. And then I go out into the world at large and see where we are overall. And, you know, that definitely makes me sad sometimes too. But this is all we have, man. And I'm going to just keep enjoying the ride and doing the things that I want to do.
I love this glowing marble run.
That's great. You know, like,
okay. So Teddy, last question.
Yeah.
You get to make it the next question. What is the question that you think is the right question that you either want to ask me or you think a perfect question to end this episode?
So good. Okay. So you've done, you know, a bunch of episodes of this so far. What is the thread that runs through them in terms of the attributes of the people sitting in the chair across from you that gives you hope for the future of these conversations and the future of humanity?
Good question, by the way. That's an excellent question.
This is my show now.
Yeah, you take it over. I like it. You know, I think the thread is what you said. I think that if we intellectualize this, then humans probably lose. We lose on something. Whether, I'm not saying it's the end of humanity, we don't know, but it could be a war, it could be climate change beyond repair, it could be something really, we know, we've all seen the dystopian realities. And I think what I'm hearing consistently from my guest is like, they're going to vote. They've heard the data. Yeah. But they're voting with the way they're doing their business in a different way. And they're voting pro-humanity. Yeah. And they're not getting caught up in the hopelessness of the news or the media. We had a guy, Angus Harvey, who opened up the TED conference. And, you know, Peter Diamandis talks about every day, don't watch the major news, stay out of social media and look at what's actually going really, really well. Like, you know, the end of malaria, you know, education rates, literacy rates, AI and just things with humanity, that we are getting smarter and educated. And we're actually getting more peaceful, even though it doesn't seem like it, because we're being blared, whatever that conflict is, we're being blared, but actually it is a safer time. And so I think it's all those things. And I think it's what actually inspired me to do the show, is to remind people of everybody matters and everybody votes. You vote with your pocketbook every day on what you purchase. You vote with the kind of company you're doing. These people who I hated their idea, I couldn't believe at 21 they were ready to greenwash. And I kind of lectured them. I said, why would you at 21 already be thinking about lying to the public about your product? You're just greenwashing. I said, your generation, you can't afford to do that. Like, why go out the gate already selling out? And I think they weren't expecting to hear that from somebody who was just supposed to be a little guest mentor. And I think they got quiet. I think one guy didn't get it and he was just going to go. And the other guy was like, oh shit. And so I think for the purpose of the show, and like, I love you coming on, it's a wake up call. It's not okay at this point. We're not in a place in humanity where we have, I don't want to say I'd say we don't have the luxury, but also just selfishly, if you can't hear that, if you want to be a happy human being and have some purpose in your life, some of the things you were talking about, I'm giving you guys the formula through the guest. We're telling you how they're not just wealthy, but they're wealthy in their life. The currency has gone way beyond the money.
Yeah.
And so if you want to see another show about, 6 minutes to 7 digits, this is not your podcast. I would get out of this podcast and go subscribe somewhere else.
Yeah.
But if you want to have a fulfilling, bigger life, and I know you and I have had such great talks about our relationships, raising children, feeling purposeful, and the difference of that versus waking up with a bank account full of credits, then you're at the right show. So that's a long-winded answer.
Beautiful. I love it. Postscript, like I remain somewhat fundamentally detached from the way that all of this goes. Like the universe existed for a very long time before humans, and it's going to continue to exist after us.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of iterations of extinction and rebirth. We would not be here but for the death of dinosaurs, right? Mammals would not have come to prominence on the earth. And so I want humanity to succeed. I think we're really interesting. And ultimately,
Yeah.
So whatever it'll be. And, whatever comes next, like those who are adaptive to change will thrive. And those who aren't adaptive to change won't. And it's going to look different than what it looks like now. And there will be certain parts of it that are really unpleasant. And it's just a different experience for us to have. So don't judge it so much.
Yeah. Enjoy the ride. Don't get too caught up in your head and serve every day. Yeah. I know for me, every day, I don't even know how it happens. It just kind of happens. And it is a source of my happiness. It's a phone call. It's helping a friend. It's not always big things. And it's good stuff. Thank you for hanging. That was a lot of fun. And thank you for that pickleball. I got the first of its kind, fully spec'd out. I'm becoming a pickleball freak these days. Fully spec'd out racket.
You gonna show it off?
What's that?
So you gonna show it off?
Yeah, I'll grab the racket. You gotta see this racket. This is one of a kind. Don't get jealous. From the Texas Ranchers, but it's not some like souvenir. This is like highly spec'd out, extra long handle, carbon fiber thickness that if I'm lucky, it'll take my game. Look at this Texas Ranchers.
Oh, adds multiple points to your duper score for sure.
If I can get multiple points, then the game gets twice as fun for me.
Yeah.
So I thank you for the wonderful gift as well.
I'll see you on the courts.
Awesome. Thank you. If you're enjoying this, I have a new newsletter, the Thriving Investor Newsletter. And if you're interested to subscribe to it, it's jp-newman.com. I think you'll enjoy the newsletter. You're going to get personal insights from me, what's happening in the market, where I think opportunities lie. And also, I get a lot of questions from a lot of you out there. And I'm going to be answering a lot of those questions. Again, how do you continue to go down this journey of how and why? Where making money comes with such deep purpose, satisfaction, and of course, success.